Okay. So I'm so sorry for canceling the class yesterday. My son, after he woke up yesterday after his nap, he was complaining of pain in his ear, and he was very cranky, kept crying. Usually he does not do that. Usually he's very happy and very chilled out child. So I had to take him to a doctor. So I'm so sorry for that. Uh, so we will start with this topic, which I shared the screenshot with you. And why this topic I'm covering? Because not only UPSC has already asked a question in our optional last year in paper 2, but this topic you all know is also there in GS. So in GS, we have a topic comparison of constitutions with that of other countries, right? Now, in optional, if we talk about, let us see what questions have already been asked in last few years. So if we compare optionals, so in optional, two questions have been asked in recent few years. One is the comparison of Indian PM, Indian Prime Minister versus the British Prime Minister, the topic for the today's class. And second, UPSC has asked the French political system, the French political system. So you all know France has a semi-presidential political system, semi-presidential political system. So in this system, the president is directly elected and then he appoints the prime minister. However, theoretically, the prime minister need not have majority in the lower house of French parliament, which is National Assembly, like our Lok Sabha. However, if president appoints someone who does not have majority in the lower house, the lower house can pass a censor motion. Censor motion, and this is like India's equivalent of no confidence motion. And lower house can remove the prime minister. That is why practically the PM has to be someone who has majority in the lower house National Assembly. That means whichever party has majority in the lower house, that party will decide at who will be the prime minister, and the president is bound to appoint that person as the prime minister. It means the prime minister belongs to the majority party in the lower house. Now, does it mean that the prime minister enjoys any position in the party also? So the question was, it's a convention that the prime minister will not have any other position in his political party. So comparison with France. In GS, if we see the same topic, and what questions have been asked so far? Yes, who will help me to recall those questions asked from this topic in GS? Okay, first question, let me help you to recall, was elections of Indian president versus French president. This question UPSC asked, I think last year only, or maybe last year, 2020. When did we have Madam Draupadi Murmu elected? 2012, 17, 22. So this was asked in 2022 because that year France also had elections of the president, right? Second question UPSC has asked, comparison of Indian judiciary versus French judiciary. This has already been asked. Third question UPSC has asked, uh, the concept of parliamentary sovereignty in India versus in UK, in Britain. This has been asked by UPSC. Fourth question, where do I write? Right here. Fourth question is the concept of equality. The concept of equality in India
And France, right?
versus US.
Oh, yes, no.
Versus US. right? Then fifth question UPSC has asked, what France can learn from Indian secularism, from Indian secularism. This question UPSC has asked, right? And then sixth question was comparison of India and USA, India versus USA, basic features of political system, basic features of political system. So these are six questions which come to my mind right now, which UPSC has asked from this topic, right? So you can see that UPSC in optional also and in GS also is asking only from three countries, USA, France, and Britain so far, right? So let us start with now this topic for today's class, Indian PM versus British PM. And look at the question. This is the question. So let me first invite your suggestions on this. Yes. How do we justify this? How do we explain this? It says elucidate. So we have to agree with the statement and make it simpler, give reasons, justify. Anybody, any idea? No?
So the British parliamentary system has always propagated a very slim margins on the party lines, in the sense that there is no very definitive majority in the parliamentary elections that has been seen for the recent few years. It has always been a very slim margin that has led to the new PM who has taken the seat. So I think, although India has a coalition, I believe the coalition that is formed in the British Parliament is much more weaker than that is formed in India.
Okay. All right. Okay. Something else? Anything else? Anybody? Any clue? No? Okay. So we will see that there are quite some significant reasons, grounds why this statement has been asked and why we can say that the Indian Prime Minister is, his position is better in terms of power, in terms of discretion, in terms of decision-making authority as compared to his British counterpart. Before we come to this topic, let us quickly revise basics of this topic. So let me take you back. Okay. So give heading British Constitution. British Constitution. Let's write some key points first. Right, first point number A, or first point simply, point number 1. It is oldest constitutional, it is oldest constitutional democratic system. Constitutional democratic system. Full stop. It became a constitutional monarchy. It became a constitutional monarchy after the Glorious Revolution. After the Glorious Revolution in 1688. In 1688. Second point, it is a blend. It is a blend of democracy. It is a blend of democracy, in bracket, right? So the symbol of democracy in Britain is, of course, the lower house, the House of Commons. Right, in bracket, House of Commons. So House of Commons symbolizes democracy. Comma. Aristocracy. Aristocracy. in bracket, right? So what is the symbol of aristocracy in Britain? The upper house, House of Lords. So House of Lords देखकर पता चलता है कि वहां पे अभी भी क्या है, aristocracy. And what is aristocracy? Aristocracy means aristocracy refers to a political system. Let me write here. It refers to a system which gives privileges. And what is a privilege? Privilege means special rights. Special rights. A system which gives privileges to certain persons. To certain persons based on birth in a particular class. Particular class. Now, who will tell me that what was the term that F.W. Riggs used for this concept, for this thing? So when he compared the fused versus prismatic societies, so he gave some features comparison. What was this called?
Bourgeoisie versus the proletariat.
No. F.W. Riggs in his comparative public administration model.
The
So
agrarian.
yes. So in his prismatic Sala model, right? In his prismatic Sala model, these are the fused societies. Fused. So he has drawn an analogy with light. Then this is the society which is prismatic. And this is a society which is diffracted. Now, by fused, he means underdeveloped countries. By prismatic, he meant developing. So India would come under prismatic category, and by diffracted, he meant developed. So then he gave certain features of fused versus diffracted. Fused versus diffracted. And one of the differences was that in few societies, underdeveloped, people are given status. They are given privileges based on their birth and not because of their merit or achievements. And this he called as ascriptive status. Ascriptive. वो स्टेटस जो आपको अपने जन्म की वजह से मिलता है, ना कि आपकी काबिलियत और because of your achievements. Whereas in diffracted societies, people enjoy status because of their achievements. So in Britain, the House of, and see, this is the irony, that although British Constitution is called as the mother of all constitutions, yet it has a feature which is quite undemocratic, the aristocracy. Because even today, the membership of upper house, House of Lords, is not open for everybody. If you are a common man of Britain, if you are a commoner, you can become member of House of Commons, lower house, not the House of Lords, right? So it is a blend of, it's a mix of democracy, aristocracy, and monarchy. And in bracket, right? What represents monarchy? The crown. Okay, next feature, right? And remember, when we are studying British Constitution, we mean the Constitution of UK, not just the Great Britain. You all know this is Great Britain. This is the entire UK. What is UK? You all must have read in geography, na? UK is equal to Great Britain plus Northern Ireland. And what is Great Britain? Great Britain has three parts. England, Wales, and Scotland. Right? So although we are calling it British Constitution, but it refers to the constitution of the entire United Kingdom. This is the UK. Wales, England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Right. Okay, so right, third point. It is an unwritten constitution. It is an unwritten constitution. No, full stop. No attempt has ever been made. No attempt has ever been made to convert it into a written constitution. Into a written constitution. Fourth point, right? Yes. Now see, because it is an unwritten constitution, unwritten, that means it has not been codified. The provisions of constitution, whatever are the laws, whatever are the rules, practices, they have not been integrated. They have not been codified. They have not been brought together into a single piece of law. So the British Constitution is scattered over. It is spread over multiple laws, multiple charters, multiple conventions, multiple judicial orders. So all of them together are considered as British Constitution. So that makes it unwritten constitution, like New Zealand, like Israel. Now, because it is unwritten constitution, it means it can't be an enacted constitution. What does that mean? Enacted means a law which you draft, you get it passed into a law, and then you bring it into force on a particular date. Right? That is why those constitutions which are unwritten constitutions, they are not considered enacted. उनको बनाया नहीं गया है, वो तो खुद इवॉल्व हुए हैं समय के साथ, with time. So they are considered as evolved constitutions and not enacted. First point. And second, because they are not enacted, so there is no one date on which that constitution came into force. Let's say like American Constitution. It came into force in March 1789. The exact date I'm forgetting. I think 7th of March. Same way Indian Constitution, 26th of January 1950. So the constitutions which are enacted, they are brought into force on a particular date. But unwritten constitutions, because they evolve gradually over a long period of time, so there is no one date. You can't say there's a particular date on which it came into force. So right, next point. It is an evolved constitution. It is an evolved constitution and not enacted. And not enacted. Okay. Now see, because it is an evolved constitution, therefore, what is the feature? Now see, in this evolutionary history of the British Constitution, which is quite long, hundreds of years of evolution, a lot of things Britishers have learnt by mistake. Right? So let's say as UPSC aspirant, you are also an evolving aspirant. So when you were a fresher, you made some mistakes. Now it's your second, third year of preparation. So now you have become more mature. So a lot of things in your evolution as aspirant are also evolutionary. You have learned them by mistake. But certain things are adopted by wisdom. By wisdom. जैसे those constitutions which are enacted, जैसे हमारा संविधान है, तो हमारी संविधान सभा कॉन्स्टिट्यूट हुई, उसकी पहली मीटिंग कब हुई? 9th of December 1946. And on this date, we started to draft our constitution. We were drafting, and finally we adopted our constitution on November 26th, 1949. And after 2 more months, 26th of January 1950, we brought it into force. We brought it into commencement. So for almost 3 years, And you all know exact time period कितना था? 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. So 12 days less than 3 years. So almost 3 years. So for 3 years, we have used our wisdom, our constitution makers applied their mind, they discussed, they debated, and then they adopted a constitution by wisdom. ठीक है, खूब डिस्कशन करने के बाद. लेकिन ब्रिटिश कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन तो ऐसे नहीं बनाया गया है, वो तो इवॉल्व हुआ है. और जब चीजें इवॉल्व होंगी तो आप कुछ करोगे, वो फेल होंगी, आपको सीखोगे, यू विल लर्न समथिंग बाय फेलियर, बाय एक्सपीरियंस. सो यू इवॉल्व दोज थिंग्स by let's say trial and error. That is why British Constitution, it is called as a child. It's a child of wisdom as well as child of mistake. Like a child can be born in two ways, na? By proper wisdom or by mistake. Like many of you who are the second sibling in your family, and especially if you are third. अगर आप तीसरे नंबर के हो और आपके दो ऑलरेडी बड़े भाई बहन हैं, so the chances are that you are a product of mistake. Right? I'm sorry if I am making you making you feel bad about your own existence. अरे, am I so unwanted or what? Right? See, definitely आज के टाइम पे 2 से ज्यादा बच्चे तो कोई नहीं करता है, ठीक है? So if anybody has third child, that is definitely by mistake, right? And a time will come in India also when people will stop having kids. We are going towards that western. हो ही रहा है सब कुछ, कल्चर में, सोसाइटी में, इकोनॉमी में. We are going on the same lines as Western people. So they have stopped having babies. In many countries, the governments are encouraging the people कि भाई please have babies. We will give you this, we will give you that. हम आपको ये incentive देंगे, ये मिलेगा आपको, वो मिलेगा. Countries like Japan, you all know, aging population. People have stopped. Yeah, right. Okay. So right, it full stop. It is a product of chance. It is a product of chance as well as wisdom. As well as wisdom. Full stop. Following are. Yes. Now see, if it is an unwritten constitution, it means the various provisions of constitution जो होते हैं किसी देश में, उनको ब्रिटेन में एक जगह कलेक्ट नहीं किया गया है. They have not been codified. Now, if that is the case, at least you have to specify that what are the components of British Constitution. So all right, they don't have one constitution book, they don't have it at one place, but then what all are considered as part of constitution, this has to be specified. So we can say that the British Constitution has 5-6 parts. So let's write following are the components of British Constitution. The components of British Constitution. First one, right? Yes. So a very interesting point about the British political system is that although it is world's oldest democratic system, mother of all democracies, yet majority, bulk of the British Constitution is just based on conventions. Conventions, you all know, are those practices, are those, you can say, traditions which have developed over a long period of time, which at some time in past maybe made sense. But some of those conventions in 21st century presently do not make any sense. Yet they are followed in the British Constitution. Let me give you some interesting examples. First example is the House of Commons, you all know, the Westminster Palace in London is the parliamentary building where they have both the chambers. So the House of Commons must be built sometime in past. So the seating capacity of House of Commons is around 400-450 MPs. But the present strength of House of Commons is 650 MPs. That means that chamber, that House of Commons, it cannot accommodate all the 650 MPs. So those MPs who come late to the house, to the chamber, late to the chamber, they will not find seats and they will have to perform their functions, debate, discussion, questions, answer, voting, everything standing. So why can't they have a new building? But if India can have a new parliament building, if we can spend crores on a new building, don't you think British economy can afford that? They can. But then that place, वो जो place है वेस्टमिंस्टर पैलेस, उस जिस जगह पे वो located है, उस जगह की importance है, historical importance है, because that is the birthplace of democracy in Britain. तो नहीं करेंगे वो लोग. In fact, जो हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स है उसका स्ट्रक्चर कुछ ऐसा है, आर्किटेक्चर. तो स्पीकर इज हियर sitting facing this side. Of course, speaker will not sit facing the wall. इधर ही फेस करेगा. अच्छा, राइट हैंड साइड में बैठेंगे रूलिंग पार्टी एमपीज. लेफ्ट हैंड साइड विल बी सीटेड द opposition party MPs. And we will write later in our notes that British system is a two-party system. So at one time, one party is a majority party in power, the other party is the main opposition party. अच्छा, अब किसी जमाने में, you all know, when democracy was evolving, so society was divided into classes. ठीक है, जैसे एक ट्रेडर क्लास होगी, बनिया क्लास जो बिजनेस करते थे. ठीक है, एक रूलिंग क्लास होगी. ठीक है, एक मिडिल क्लास या लेट अस से रूरल क्लास होगी, एग्रेरियन. फिर एक मिलिट्री क्लास होगी, मिलिट्री क्लास. सो लेट अस से आई बिलोंग टू मिलिट्री क्लास एंड आई एम ऑल्सो मेंबर ऑफ हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स. एंड लेट अस से आई बिलोंग टू द ओपोजिशन पार्टी. तो जब मैं हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स में जाऊंगा, आई विल टेक माई सीट ऑन द लेफ्ट साइड ऑफ द स्पीकर. And because I belong to military class, maybe I will go in my full military ceremonial dress, ceremonial uniform, which includes my guard, face guard, whatever equipments they used to have in medieval times, 400, 500 years ago. तो जो भी उनके equipments हुआ करते थे लड़ाई के, combat के, including a sword, including a sword. तो मैं अपनी पूरी full ceremonial military dress के साथ पहुंचा हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स में. मान लो आप भी एमपी हो हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स के, एंड यू ऑल्सो बिलोंग टू मिलिट्री क्लास, बट यू आर ऑफ द मेजोरिटी पार्टी. तो आप भी आओगे अपनी मिलिट्री यूनिफॉर्म में, विद फुल यूनिफॉर्म एंड योर स्वॉर्ड द मेन वेपन, और आप आके बैठोगे कहाँ? आप आके बैठोगे इस साइड. नाउ व्हाट इफ आई एम सिटिंग हियर, यू आर सिटिंग हियर, एंड वी आर opposition parties, and we are discussing something, and that discussion becomes heated, it becomes passionate. गर्मा गर्मी हो गई बहुत हाउस में, और मैं खड़ा हो गया अपनी सीट पे, आप भी खड़े हो गए अपनी सीट पे. अब हम दोनों के पास तलवार है, स्वॉर्ड है. तो कहीं ऐसा ना हो कि हम अपनी स्वॉर्ड बाहर निकाल लें और वायलेंस हो जाए हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स के अंदर. इसलिए क्या किया गया? इसलिए ये डिसाइड किया गया, दिस वाज डिसाइडेड दैट दीज टू फ्रंट बेंचेस, द डिस्टेंस बिटवीन देम विल बी ऑफ 2 swords. आई थिंक यू कैन गेस द रीजन. कि अगर 2 तलवारों का गैप होगा तो दोनों जो एमपीज आमने सामने बैठे हैं, अगर उन्होंने तलवार निकाल भी ली ऐसे, तो उनकी तलवार ऐसे एक दूसरे को टच नहीं कर पाएंगी, तो वायलेंस नहीं होगा. अब ये कन्वेंशन था किसी जमाने में, 400, 500 years ago, when this was the setup. But do you think today in 21st century, the MPs of House of Commons, they go with their sword? No. Today they go suited, booted, nice tie, black, navy blue suit and white shirt and red tie. So today they don't take their sword. But guess what? आज भी जो ये डिस्टेंस है इन 2 बेंचेस में, वो आज भी कितना है? 2 swords का.
बट सर अगर हीटेड आर्ग्यूमेंट हो सकते हैं तो 2 sword distance won't be enough, no? फिर भी
नहीं तो तो कितना इनफ होगा फिर?
इनफ ऐसे भी नहीं होगा, अभी तो गन्स है तो.
हाँ, सही बात है, अभी तो गन्स हैं. करेक्ट. ओके. So if Bhadra ever becomes an MP, there would be extra security check.
हो सकता है.
Acha, one more interesting convention. So you all know that the British, this we also have in our country, that the first session of Parliament every year and the first session of Parliament after the Lok Sabha elections, you all know what do we have? We have a joint address of President of India to both the houses of Parliament. Now this thing we have taken from British system. In our constitution, this is explicitly mentioned in Article 86, if I'm not wrong, Whereas in Britain it is just a convention. वहां कन्वेंशन है, हमारे यहाँ रिटन है कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में. तो अब जो ये ज्वाइंट एड्रेस होता है इसमें किंग, मतलब रिसेंटली वी हैड क्वीन, until recently the queen has now died, now they have a king successor. So the queen for such a long time used to go to House of Lords. Acha, in our case, where does this session take place? Combined joint address of president. So in the older building now of Parliament, we had a separate chamber of House of Commons. A separate chamber of Lok Sabha, a separate chamber of Raj Sabha, and in our older Parliament building, we had a central hall also. एक सेंट्रल हॉल हुआ करता था जिसमें सारी सेरेमनीज होती हैं, आपने देखा होगा. अवार्ड सेरेमनीज दी जाती हैं, स्पोर्ट्स प्राइजेस, अर्जुना अवार्ड्स, जितने भी सेरेमोनियल इवेंट्स होते हैं वो सारे सेंट्रल हॉल में होते हैं. ये वही हॉल है जहाँ पे द ब्रिटिश द आफ्टर इंडिपेंडेंस पंडित नेहरू गेव दैट फेमस स्पीच, द ट्रिस्ट विद डेस्टिनी स्पीच. ठीक है, तो अभी जो नई बिल्डिंग है उसका आई डोंट नो उसमें क्या स्टेटस है, लेकिन पुरानी बिल्डिंग में सेंट्रल हॉल था. लेकिन ब्रिटेन में क्या होता है कि क्वीन और द किंग नाउ द किंग गोज टू हाउस ऑफ लॉर्ड्स, और जितने भी हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स के एमपीज हैं, हाउस ऑफ कॉमन एमपीज, दे विल कम टू हाउस ऑफ लॉर्ड्स एंड दे विल स्टैंड. They will not sit because House of Lords has sufficient space only for the MPs of House of Lords. So House of Commons who are elected, whereas House of Lords where most of them are by birth, they will remain seated. The Queen comes, right? The House of Commons MPs come to the House of Lords, they stand and they listen to the speech of the Queen. Interestingly, किसी जमाने में, let's say 200-300 years ago, when terrorism was not there, the modern day terrorism meaning, right? When this was not there, so security was as such not a bigger threat, right? Somebody would shoot, somebody would throw a bomb, or somebody would assassinate the king or the queen. तो उस समय वो जो बिल्डिंग थी, वेस्ट, मान लो ये बिल्डिंग है वेस्टमिंस्टर पैलेस, वेस्टमिंस्टर, इट्स नॉट मिनिस्टर, माइंड द स्पेलिंग, वेस्टमिंस्टर पैलेस. तो इस बिल्डिंग के पेरीफेरी में द सिक्योरिटी वुड नॉट बी दैट स्ट्रिक्ट द वे इट इज एट प्रेजेंट. At present, security is quite tight, right? Like in Indian Parliament also, if you go, Indian Parliament also has multiple layers of security. ठीक है, दिल्ली पुलिस की एक लेयर है सिक्योरिटी की, फिर उसके अंडर पार्लियामेंट की अपनी एक सिक्योरिटी सर्विस है. पहले सीआईएसएफ हुआ करती थी पार्लियामेंट के लिए, बाद में सीआईएसएफ को हटा लिया गया है, और अब पार्लियामेंट की अपनी एक सिक्योरिटी सर्विस है. तो मल्टीपल लेयर्स ऑफ सिक्योरिटी होती हैं अभी, बट नॉट सम टाइम इन पास्ट 300-400 years ago. तो अब जब क्वीन will go to the House of Lords for the speech, तो वहां पे ordinary people will also be roaming around. Ordinary people, आम Britishers. तो क्वीन का जो पूरा वो होगा ना, पूरा उसका जो मोटरकेड या कैवलकेड जो भी होता होगा, उस जमाने में तो हॉर्स जो भी वो होता है ना, वो हॉर्स कार्ट, तो उसके ऊपर बैठ के क्वीन विल गो टू द हाउस ऑफ लॉर्ड्स. तो उनके आगे दे विल बी एन एस्कॉर्ट. There will be an escort who used to shout that please make way for the king, long live the king, make way for the king. क्योंकि वहां पे आम लोग भी घूम रहे हैं, लेकिन अभी तो ऐसा नहीं होता है. अभी तो वहां पे there is strict security. But even today this escort shouts the same thing, that long live the king, make way for the king, even when there is nobody around. But why is he shouting still? क्योंकि convention है. For example, have a look at this. I hope you can hear the audio.
My Lords, pray be seated. My Lords and members of the House of Commons, my government's priority has always been to secure the United Kingdom's departure from the European Union on the 31st of October. My government intends to work towards a new partnership with the European Union based on free trade.
So was the audio there? You could hear the audio.
Yes, sir.
Acha, okay, okay.
So,
So did you see that how the House of Lords MPs were already seated? And then in the end, you could see those House of Commons MPs coming and standing, right? It was already full. House of Lords was already full, right? तो इस तरह के कन्वेंशंस वहां पे बहुत सारे हैं यूके में, and this makes up the bulk of the British Constitution. In fact, when I was preparing the lecture for this for today's class, so I was working on my laptop. So my son came and he saw this video, and he was like, "Papa, ये कौन है? ये क्या है?" I said, "This is the British Queen." So towards the middle of the video, when the Queen थोड़ा zoom हुआ, तो Queen was quite aged. तो my son was like, "पापा ये Queen है? ये तो बूढ़ी दादी है." Because my son, वो जो स्टोरीज उनको सुनाते हैं उसमें उसकी इमेज क्या है कि क्वीन होगी तो यंग सी होगी, सुंदर सी होगी, क्यूट सी होगी, तो ये तो बूढ़ी दादी, हाउ कैन शी बी क्वीन? तो somebody has to explain to him, no, queen can be old also, right? Okay. So, right, first point, unwritten conventions. First component, unwritten conventions. Second component is great charters. Great charters, such as yeah, see, great charters refers to those notifications, proclamations, announcements which the British monarchs have made from time to time. So those announcements, those proclamations, वो घोषणाएं are called as great charters. For example, we all have read something called as Magna Carta. So Magna Carta was a proclamation by a king way back in Britain in 1215 called King John. So आज से 800 साल पहले, for the first time, the king gave certain rights to the British people. So this Magna Carta is a symbol of rights for the British people. That is why Indian Constitution Part 3rd is popularly called as Magna Carta. Right? Okay, third component, right? Parliamentary laws. Parliamentary laws. Fourth, judicial verdicts. Judicial verdicts. Fifth, legal commentaries. Legal commentaries like so legal commentaries refers to those books or those articles which have been written by famous legal experts, constitutional experts in Britain. Like in India, let us say Subhash Kashyap is a well-known expert of Indian constitution. Same way, Britain also has had some famous people. One of them we have in our syllabus, paper 1, I'm sure you all know, A.V. Dicey. We have read about his concept of rule of law. Rule of law. Right? In our chapter called Administrative Law, paper 1. Administrative Law, paper 1. Right? So A.V. Dicey की एक famous book है, इसका नाम है Law of Constitutions. Law of Constitutions. So this book and such other books are considered as part of British Constitution. Sixth point, right? No, that's it. That's it. These are the 5 main components of the Constitution. Next one, right? Next feature. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fifth feature. Fifth feature, right? It is a unitary constitution. It is a unitary constitution. That means all the powers are located. So we can write in bracket, right? All powers are with central government. Are with central government. Next feature, right? It is a two-party system. It is a two-party system. It is a two-party system. Next point, right? Sovereignty of parliament. Sovereignty of parliament. And put a dash, right? Parliament is supreme. Parliament is supreme. And its laws cannot be declared void. Cannot be declared void by Supreme Court. By Supreme Court. Okay, look at this question. 2023. So you may write the question. Write the question. Compare and contrast. This is GS, not an optional. Compare and contrast the British and Indian approaches to parliamentary sovereignty. So let's do one thing. Let us make a comparison. So please draw 2 columns. Draw 2 columns. On left hand side, right? British approach. British approach to parliamentary sovereignty. On right hand side, right? Indian approach to parliamentary sovereignty. See, first of all, technically speaking, this question does not make sense. This question in itself is wrong because Indian political system is not based on the concept of parliamentary sovereignty. The word sovereignty means supreme power. Supreme power. So in democracy, the supreme power is said to be vested in the people. And people express this power via their constitution. That is why Samvidhan starts with what words? We, the people of India, last paragraph, do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this constitution. So the constitution gets its legitimacy, it gets its acceptance because of its people. So the supreme power is with the people. And because people practically can't exercise it, so they give the power to the constitution. So Samvidhan becomes supreme in democracy. But British has what concept? Britain has the concept of parliamentary sovereignty. So in Britain, not the constitution of Britain, but Parliament of Britain is supreme. So basically this question is technically not correct. But because examiner has asked it, we can give 3-4 points of comparison. First point, right? First, absolute sovereignty. absolute sovereignty. What does that mean? In Britain, the Parliament of Britain, British Parliament, is absolutely sovereign. It means there are no limitations whatsoever on the powers of the Parliament, because any law made by the Parliament cannot be declared as null and void by the British Supreme Court. That means even if that law is unconstitutional, although it would not do that, it will not do that, but theoretically it can. So if it wants to, it can make any law, and the British Supreme Court would be helpless. So in that sense, its sovereignty is absolute. So put a dash here, right? Parliament can make, British Parliament can make or change laws, and no person or authority, can override or set aside the legislation of Parliament. The legislation of Parliament. This side, right? This side. Limited sovereignty. Limited sovereignty. So Indian Parliament is not absolutely sovereign. So here, right, put a dash, right? Indian Parliament is not absolutely sovereign. Is not absolutely sovereign, and there is supremacy of constitution. And there is supremacy of constitution. Okay, second point, right? Unwritten constitution. Unwritten constitution. And this side, right, in India, written constitution. Written constitution. Third, right, judicial review is weak. Judicial review is weak. Third, right, judicial review is strong. Is strong. In bracket you can write Indian Supreme Court. Indian Supreme Court is considered more powerful. Is considered more powerful than British Supreme Court. Than British Supreme Court. Fourth point. Fourth point, a difference between us and them is that Indian Parliament is not completely sovereign, because Indian Parliament is under a major limitation. And that limitation is that the Parliament cannot make laws in such a manner that fundamental rights of citizens are taken away, they are abridged, or they are violated. And this is clearly mentioned in Article 13, Clause 2. So Article 13, you all know, comes under Part 3rd of Constitution. Part 3rd is from Articles 12 to Article 35. So after Article 12, we have Article 13. इसके Clause 2 में साफ साफ लिखा है, the state shall not make any law which takes away or abridges, curtails any right given under this part, means Part 3rd, and any such law, if made, will be void. तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन क्लियरली रेस्ट्रिक्शंस प्लेस करता है, लिमिटेशंस प्लेस करता है ऑन द अथॉरिटी ऑफ पार्लियामेंट, whereas in Britain there is no such restriction, right? Fourth point, no substantive limitations. No substantive limitations on parliament. on British Parliament. On British Parliament. Such as fundamental rights. Such as fundamental rights. And in this side, right, fourth point, fundamental rights FRs limit the power of Indian Parliament. FRs limit the power of Indian Parliament. In bracket, right, Article 13, Clause 2. Article 13, Clause 2. Okay. Next feature, let's write. So we have written 7, 8 points. Last one was sovereignty of Parliament. So in this point, we have did a comparison of sovereignty of British Parliament versus sovereignty of Indian Parliament, because this question has been asked by UPSC. This question, right? Next feature, right? Rule of law. Rule of law is the basis of British Constitution. Is the basis of British Constitution. Okay. Now we come to give heading British judicial system. The British judicial system. Okay. Yes. Okay. Now see, if we look at the British judicial system, then Britain has three separate judicial systems. One judicial system is of Wales and England together. Second judicial system is of Scotland, and third system is for Northern Ireland. So it's like three parallel systems of judiciary. On the top of three, we have the British Supreme Court. Right. So right, first point, the UK has three separate legal systems. Three separate legal systems. Semicolon. One each for, or you can write, wait, ऐसे लिखो, right, first, for England and Wales. For England and Wales. Second point, for Scotland. And third, for Northern Ireland. The Supreme Court serves as the highest court of appeal. Serves as the highest court of appeal for all cases. For all cases in England. In England and Wales. In England and Wales, and in Northern Ireland. And in Northern Ireland. What does it mean? Let me explain by a diagram so as to. So these two have a combined judicial system. Then we have Northern Ireland. This has a separate system. And then we have the Scotland. It has a third system. Now above all of them, we have the British Supreme Court. Supreme Court, which will hear appeals in all the cases, civil cases, constitutional cases, and criminal cases, except In Scotland, the criminal appeals will not go to Supreme Court of UK. So please write. So I will repeat, the Supreme Court serves as the highest court of appeal for all cases. So the word all here refers to civil, criminal, whatever, all cases in where? England and Wales, second, Northern Ireland, but only for civil cases in Scotland. Only for civil cases in Scotland. Then criminal appeals, what is the highest court in Scotland? So if it's a criminal case, the highest court in these two is Supreme Court. पर स्कॉटलैंड में कोई क्राइम हुआ है तो वो उसका हाईएस्ट कोर्ट कौन सा माना जाता है? सो राइट, द हाई कोर्ट ऑफ जस्टिशियरी, द हाई कोर्ट ऑफ जस्टिशियरी in Scotland, is the last court of, is the court of last resort, is the court of last resort for criminal cases. Okay, next point, right? Next point. So like in Indian Supreme Court, we designate the head of Supreme Court as CJI, plus we have other 33 justices or judges. In UK, they call the head of the Supreme Court as president. To assist him, there is a deputy president, plus there are 10 other justices. So right, Supreme Court is headed by the president and deputy president and is composed of another 10 justices. Another 10 justices. Next point. Yes. So you would be surprised to know that until recently, even after Supreme Court has given a verdict, the Supreme Court's verdict could be appealed, could be challenged. Guess where? In the House of Lords. It means House of Lords, a group of privileged people, they even had overriding powers over Supreme Court. So this has recently been changed by bringing certain constitutional reforms in 2005 and it came into effect in 2009. That's why some books ना अगर आप पढ़ोगे तो कुछ बुक्स में आपको अभी भी ये मिलेगा कि ब्रिटेन में द हाईएस्ट कोर्ट ऑफ अपील इज नॉट सुप्रीम कोर्ट बट द हाउस ऑफ लॉर्ड्स. तो ये था. तो अगर वो बुक 2009 से पहले लिखी गई है और अपडेट नहीं हुई है तो उन बुक्स में आप आज भी आपको यही मिलेगा. But now it has changed. It has been changed. So, right? The Constitutional Reform Act. The Constitutional Reform Act 2005 provided for Supreme Court as the final court of appeal. Full stop. Before this, House of Lords, was the final court of appeal, and constitutional court. constitutional court. Okay, next point, right? Right. Cases that make it to the Supreme Court, cases that make it to the Supreme Court in UK, are usually those with the greatest general public importance. With the greatest general public importance. Full stop. They often have wide-ranging implications. Wide-ranging implications for the relationship between government and the public or among different institutions of UK. Among different institutions of UK. Next point, right? The powers of British Supreme Court. The powers of British Supreme Court are still more limited. Than those of Supreme Courts in other countries. Supreme Courts in other countries. Full stop. In particular, comma, British Supreme Court does not have the power to declare void primary legislation enacted by the UK Parliament. Enacted by UK Parliament. Full stop. This is because of the doctrine. This is because of the doctrine of parliamentary sovereignty. Parliamentary sovereignty, which means that Parliament has the power to make or unmake a law without any constraint, comma, even from Supreme Court. Even from Supreme Court. Now, next point, right? Next point. In next point, you can give heading judicial review in UK. Judicial review in UK, because a question can be asked in GS or in optional, where it will ask you that compare the Supreme Court of India with UK, or it can even ask compare the power of judicial review of Indian Supreme Court vis-a-vis British Supreme Court. So let's write a few points in this judicial review. Now, we have already mentioned that judicial review power in UK is quite weak. The reason you know that the British system is parliamentary sovereignty. Second, what British Supreme Court can do. So imagine the British Supreme Court. Now, if the Parliament of Britain, it makes a law, this law we can call as primary law. Okay, so a law which is directly coming from legislature can be called as the primary law. I hope you all remember the concept of delegated legislation, whereby the parliament, the legislature often delegates some powers to the executive कि भाई हम ऐसा ऐसा लॉ बना रहे हैं, इसकी जो भी डिटेल्स रिक्वायर्ड हो वो आप बना सकते हो विद इन द फ्रेमवर्क ऑफ दिस लॉ. इसी लॉ के दायरे में नहीं रहकर, संविधान के दायरे में रहकर यू कैन मेक सम डिटेल्स. So based on this primary law, then what may happen? Based on this primary law, the government of UK, it can make certain secondary legislations. Secondary legislations, which will be called by what name? Their name can be rules. नाम उनको आप रूल दे लो, उनको आप रेगुलेशन नाम दे सकते हो, उनको आप ऑर्डर्स नाम दे सकते हो, उनको आप बाय लॉज नाम दे सकते हो, whatever name you want to give it. Like we have, for example, civil services conduct rules. So those rules have been made by central government using the power given to it by the parliament. So all these will fall under what category? Under secondary legislations. Now, in India, what can happen? In India, you know that nothing can violate the constitution. It means neither the primary law made by Indian Parliament nor any secondary law made by executive, nothing can violate the constitution. So Indian Supreme Court has the judicial review power to declare any of these as what? As null and void. But British Supreme Court cannot declare the primary legislation as void. Because again, you know logic, that the concept is parliamentary sovereignty. But अगर पार्लियामेंट ने कोई लॉ बनाकर ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट को, एग्जीक्यूटिव को कोई पावर्स दी हैं और उन पावर्स को यूज करके एग्जीक्यूटिव ने कुछ रूल्स बनाए हैं, कुछ रेगुलेशंस बनाए हैं, और इन रूल्स या रेगुलेशंस में देयर इज समथिंग व्हिच वायलेट्स द ब्रिटिश कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, देन व्हाट सुप्रीम कोर्ट कैन डू? Then Supreme Court of Britain can declare the secondary legislation as what? As null and void. इसका मतलब the power of judicial review in UK is not absent. Absent नहीं है. It's just that it is limited. Got the point? So write this. Right? While judiciary cannot overturn primary legislation, comma, it can declare secondary legislation. It can declare secondary legislation to be void if it is found to be ultra vires. If it is found to be ultra vires. Full stop. This means it is beyond the scope of the powers. It is beyond the scope of the powers that have been granted to the authority by primary legislation. Okay, so if I'm a British citizen, what I can do? If I feel that any law of the parliament is reducing, is abridging my fundamental rights, my liberties, my freedoms, then I would be helpless. Then I can't go to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court can't protect my rights. It means my rights, my liberties are not protected against the primary law made by the parliament. But अगर किसी गवर्नमेंट के रूल ने या ऑर्डर ने या पॉलिसी ने कुछ ऐसा बनाया है which is violating my basic rights, freedoms, liberties, then I can go to British Supreme Court, and then British Supreme Court can protect me. It means Britain में if citizens' rights are violated by the British administration, then yes, they can knock the doors of judiciary and they can get their rights protected. But if the rights and liberties of British people are violated by Parliament, then the Supreme Court will be helpless. So, right, judicial review can be a powerful tool, through which British citizens ensure that ministers and other public officials are not abusing their power, full stop. It allows them to approach Supreme Court to review the decisions which affects them. Okay. One more point that we can write in this judicial review is that you now understand very well that what is the scope and what is the power of Supreme Court in UK. Another thing that Supreme Court in UK can do, the primary law made by British Parliament, it cannot be declared as unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. No, it can't do that. But it can do one thing. You know that UK is a part of Europe. And therefore, UK has signed something called as European Convention on Human Rights. European Convention on Human Rights. Therefore, what the Supreme Court in UK can do, that if a primary law made by British Parliament violates British Constitution, then it would be helpless. But if that primary law made by the Parliament, it violates this convention, European Convention on Human Rights, then what Supreme Court can do? Supreme Court can declare this primary law as incompatible. This is called declaration of incompatibility. तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट क्या डिक्लेयर कर देगा कि भाई दिस लॉ पार्लियामेंट यू हैव मेड इज इनकम्पैटिबल विद द यूरोपियन कन्वेंशन ऑन ह्यूमन राइट्स टू विच यूके इज अ सिग्नेटरी. तो यूके ने इस कन्वेंशन को साइन किया है, यूके इसका मेंबर है. तो भाई पार्लियामेंट आपने जो लॉ बनाया है वो इस लॉ के साथ कंपैटिबल नहीं है और ऐसा हम डिक्लेयर कर रहे हैं. तो क्या ऐसा डिक्लेयर करने से ये प्राइमरी लॉ इनएप्लीकेबल हो जाएगा? Will it cease to exist? The answer is no. It will not cease to exist. However, the British Parliament now has a choice whether it wants to amend that law and make it compatible as per the Convention on Human Rights, or if British Parliament wants, it can simply ignore the judgment of the British Supreme Court. तो इसका मतलब ये जजमेंट बाइंडिंग नहीं है पार्लियामेंट के ऊपर, वो बस कोर्ट इतना बोल के छोड़ देगा कि भाई आपने जो ये प्राइमरी लॉ बनाया है ये इनकम्पैटिबल है, बाकी आप देख लो. राइट, सो राइट, द सुप्रीम कोर्ट कैन इशू a right in single quotes declaration of incompatibility, quotes close, which formally declares that an act of parliament is in breach of the European Convention on human rights. Full stop. But Parliament is not legally obliged to change the law, as a consequence, although it may often choose to do so. It may often choose to do so. Okay, second last point, right? After this topic, right? In England and Wales, so in England and Wales, what is the hierarchy? First, we have the Supreme Court, the British Supreme Court. Then below Supreme Court, we have some senior courts. For example, the senior courts are the Court of Appeal, the Court of Appeal. Then there is something called as High Court of Justice, High Court of Justice. And then there is something called as Crown Court, Crown Court. So these three types of courts are the second level of courts, and they are called as senior courts. And then at the bottom, we have third type of courts, which are called subordinate judiciary. Like in India, we also have subordinate judiciary. And in subordinate judiciary, we have county courts. We have county courts, plus we have family courts. In India also, we have family courts. Plus we have magistrates court. Magistrates court. So this is the hierarchy of courts in England and Wales. And let's not study about Scotland and Ireland. It will really complicate things. Okay, enough, right? Now we have to study difference between parliamentary democracy. But wait. Let's do one thing. Let's skip this topic for now. Otherwise, we can't complete topic today. Let's first come to topic of the class, and then we will come back to this topic later, right? So let us skip this topic for a while. Now give a heading: Indian PM versus British PM. Indian PM versus British PM. Okay, right. First, opening line, right? Parliamentary form of government. Parliamentary form of government in India. Is modeled on the lines of Westminster model. Westminster model, but on comparing the position of Indian Prime Minister, on comparing the position of Indian Prime Minister with his British counterpart, comma, it is clear that Indian Prime Minister is more powerful. Indian Prime Minister is more powerful. Full stop. Following are the arguments to substantiate this. Right, first point. First point. Yes. The first reason why Indian PM is more powerful is that the Indian political system is a multi-party democracy. We all know this. Whereas British system is a two-party system. And because of this, what happens in Britain, the two-party system means one of the parties for time being is the ruling party and the other party becomes the main opposition party. Opposition party. And in past, what has happened? That the number of seats of ruling party and opposition party, the difference is not great. The difference can be of, let us say, 20, 30, 40, 50 seats maximum, which means that the ruling party does not have an absolute or a very clear majority in the lower house, House of Commons, which means that if the ruling party is not able to deliver on its promises and the British people are not happy with the performance of the government, they always have a ready alternative prime minister. They have a ready government can be formed by whom? By the main opposition party. Whereas India, mein what happens? That one party is so powerful, let us say right now, BJP has 240 seats. So plus their alliance partners, they are able to cross 272. What if this party is not able to form the government? Then the second biggest party is Congress, which has only 100 seats. So with only 100 seats, Congress would find it very difficult to bring an alliance together and cross what number? Cross 272. तो इंडिया की जो मेन ओपोजिशन पार्टी है वो अपने आप को इस तरह से दिखा नहीं पाती लोगों को कि देखो अगर आपको इस सरकार से खुश नहीं हो तो लेट्स वोट देम आउट एंड यू कैन गिव मी द पावर, आई कैन फॉर्म द गवर्नमेंट। तो इस तरह से खुद को दिखा नहीं पाते, खुद को प्रोजेक्ट नहीं कर पाते। पर ये चीज कहां पॉसिबल हो पाती है? ब्रिटेन में। एंड दैट इज व्हाई द ब्रिटिश प्राइम मिनिस्टर would always be on his toes because he knows that if I can't deliver, then they have a party waiting for me to fall and they are ready to form the government. So this makes Indian Prime Minister more powerful than the British Prime Minister. Right, first point. Britain has a two-party system. Britain has a two-party system where the political power, keeps shuffling between the Labour Party, and the Conservative Party. Full stop. This allows the main opposition party. To always project an alternative government. Full stop. This makes the ruling party. This makes the ruling party and Prime Minister accountable. And thus British Prime Minister is constantly looking for retaining majority in lower house. Full stop. India, comma, on the other hand, comma, is a multi-party system. and thus the opposition is often fractured. The opposition is often fractured. Full stop. It is not able to offer. It is not able to offer a clear alternative government to people. Clear alternative government to people. Second reason why we can say that the Indian PM is more powerful. Yes. Now in India, tell me, what are the functions given to the Prime Minister in the Constitution? कौन बताएगा? What are the functions or the powers that the Constitution gives to the Prime Minister? On paper, not practically. Practically, we all know he has a lot of powers.
To aid and advise the president on.
Correct. So the first function is that along with the Council of Ministers. So even this is not his sole function. उन अकेले का नहीं है. Along with his Mantri Parishad, one of his functions is to aid and advise the president. ठीक है. This is given in Article 74. ठीक है. Done. Then second.
Sir, recommends the formation of COM.
Correct. Very good. So second power is that the Prime Minister selects his Council of Ministers, and this is Article 75. So the President appoints the ministers only on the advice of Prime Minister. ये ठीक है. Second function, second power कह सकते हैं. And
Sir,
third,
to inform him about the administrative.
very good. So another duty
Yes.
given to the PM is to inform the President, to communicate to President about the affairs of administration. देश में क्या चल रहा है, right? Plus the proposed legislations. इनके बारे में प्रेसिडेंट को बताना, इन्फॉर्म करना is the job of Prime Minister. Recently, the governor of West Bengal has used the same power. Under Article 167, he has said to Mamata Banerjee, Ms. Banerjee, it's your job to inform me what's happening in Bengal. So keep informing me, right? Other than these three functions, anything else comes to your mind? Don't stress yourself. That's it. यही है बस तीन. तो अगर देखा जाए तो इंडियन प्राइम मिनिस्टर की जो लिस्ट ऑफ पावर्स एंड फंक्शंस हैं वो तो कहीं भी कोडिफाइड नहीं है. दे आर ऑल अनरिटन. Only 3 functions are specifically found in the Constitution. It means every other power of Indian Prime Minister is unwritten. तो क्या आज तक हमने इंडिया में कोई लॉ ऐसा लेकर आए हैं या ऐसा कोई ऑर्डर बनाया गया है जिसमें हमने साफ साफ लिखा हो कि भाई ये 4th फंक्शन है, ये 5th है, ये 6th है, ये 7th है? डू वी हैव दिस लिस्ट? नो, वी डोंट हैव दिस लिस्ट, व्हिच मींस that the powers and functions of Indian Prime Minister are unwritten. They are uncodified. Which means what? It strengthens his position. कल को आप भी as a bureaucrat, would you prefer if your powers and functions are clearly in a list written? Or would you like your powers to be unwritten, undefined, uncodified? Undefined. ठीक है. अब अगर हम यही चीज कंपेयर करें ब्रिटेन के केस में, सो इवन द पावर्स ऑफ द ब्रिटिश प्राइम मिनिस्टर आर अनकोडिफाइड. सेम चीज है, लेकिन डिफरेंस कहां आएगा कि ब्रिटेन में सो फार मेनी अटेम्प्ट्स हैव बीन मेड which have tried to codify, which have tried to list and make a written list of the powers and functions of the Prime Minister. वहां पे ऐसी कई सारी कोशिशें हो चुकी हैं. इसका मतलब वहां पे क्या है? एटलीस्ट एक डिबेट है, एटलीस्ट एक ड्राफ्ट है, एटलीस्ट एक प्रपोजल है कि भाई ब्रिटिश प्राइम मिनिस्टर ये कर सकता है, दिस ही कैन डू एंड दिस ही कैन नॉट डू. भले ही आज तक वहां कोई लॉ नहीं बना है इस चीज के ऊपर, लेकिन कम से कम कोशिश तो की गई है। तो अगर हम कंपेयर करें तो आपको किसकी पोजीशन बेटर लग रही है पावर के सेंस में? इंडियन प्राइम मिनिस्टर। क्योंकि इंडिया में हमने आज तक 74 ईयर्स में ऑफ वर्किंग ऑफ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, वी हैव नॉट इवन ट्राइड कि हम कोई एक ऐसा डॉक्यूमेंट बनाए, कोई एक्सपर्ट कमिटी बनाए जो बैठे और लिखे कि देखो पीएम की ये पावर्स हैं, ये वो कर सकता है, ये वो नहीं कर सकता है। ऐसा कभी कुछ हुआ ही नहीं है। ब्रिटेन में एटलीस्ट देयर इज अ पब्लिक डिबेट, देयर इज अ डॉक्यूमेंट विच हैज बीन प्रिपेयर्ड। भले वो डॉक्यूमेंट पास नहीं हुआ, इनफॉर्मल है, लेकिन कम से कम कोशिश तो की गई है। And that means Indian Prime Minister has more unwritten, unspecified powers than his British counterpart. Right, second point. There have been attempts. There have been attempts in UK to codify the powers of Prime Minister. The powers of Prime Minister. Right, such as let's write couple of examples of attempts कि कब कोशिश की गई थी ऐसा बनाने की। राइट, फर्स्ट ए पॉइंट, सच एज फ्रॉम 1947 to 1948 the cabinet office prepared a paper titled, write in double quotes, functions of the prime minister and his staff, unquote. So you can see that even the British cabinet is trying to prepare a paper regarding the powers of the prime minister, right? B point, right? Second, in 2014, the political and constitutional reform committee produced a report titled role and powers of the British Prime Minister. Full stop. Next paragraph, right? In India, comma, there have been no such attempts. And thus powers of prime minister remain uncodified. Okay. Third reason. Right? Practice of shadow cabinet. I think you all know the concept of shadow cabinet, right? Anybody who does not know the concept? All of you know this. Okay, very well. So now you understand that we have an actual cabinet along with the ruling prime minister, and then in parallel to that cabinet we have a shadow cabinet which is formed by the main opposition party. It's like we have, let us say, prime minister, his shadow is the leader of opposition. Then we have, let us say, defense minister, So his shadow will be a shadow defense minister. Like this, for every minister, we have a shadow minister. Now, this entire set of ministers are appointed by the opposition party. And what do? They keep a close eye. They keep a close watch over the activities, the policies, the decisions happening in the ministries. For example, if I am the shadow defense minister, I will closely keep an eye over what is happening in the Raksha Mantralaya. और उससे क्या होगा कि जब पार्लियामेंट में डिबेट एंड डिस्कशन होगा किसी डिफेंस या सिक्योरिटी के मैटर के ऊपर, तो उस डिबेट को लीड कौन करेगा? आई विल लीड, बिकॉज मैं पिछले काफी टाइम से क्लोजली ऑब्जर्व कर रहा हूं द एक्टिविटीज ऑफ द डिफेंस मिनिस्ट्री। उससे क्या होगा कि उससे मेरा जो लेवल ऑफ एक्सपर्टीज है, मान लो अगर मैं शैडो डिफेंस मिनिस्टर हूं, तो मेरा जो लेवल ऑफ एक्सपर्टीज है वो किस में डेवलप हो रहा है? इन दी डिफेंस मिनिस्ट्री, उसकी पॉलिसीज में, उसके फंक्शनिंग में, उसकी प्रॉब्लम्स में, उसके सॉल्यूशंस में। तो अब जब मेरे क्वेश्चंस जो होंगे, डोंट यू थिंक दे विल बी मच मोर क्वालिटेटिव एज कंपेयर टू इन इंडिया वेयर वी डोंट हैव शैडो कैबिनेट? तो हमारे यहाँ क्या कर सकते हैं, मतलब अगर मैं कांग्रेस का एमपी हूं, तो मैं चाहे तो सिक्योरिटी का सवाल पूछूं, मैं चाहे हेल्थ केयर का सवाल पूछूं, मैं चाहे एजुकेशन का सवाल पूछूं, क्योंकि मेरा कोई एक एरिया ऑफ एक्सपर्टीज तो है ही नहीं। और जब एरिया ऑफ एक्सपर्टीज नहीं है, तो उस केस में मेरे जो क्वेश्चंस होंगे वो भी कोई बहुत ज्यादा स्पेसिफिक, पिन पॉइंटेड या एग्जैक्ट नहीं होंगे, क्योंकि मेरी एक्सपर्टीज नहीं है। जबकि ब्रिटेन में क्या हो रहा है, देयर आर शैडो कैबिनेट मिनिस्टर्स हु आर क्लोजली वॉचिंग द एक्टिविटीज ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स। तो उससे डोंट यू थिंक व्हाट विल इंक्रीज? द अकाउंटेबिलिटी ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट, द अकाउंटेबिलिटी ऑफ द प्राइम मिनिस्टर। उससे क्या होगा? his power is somewhat reduced as compared to what happens in India. Right? So, right, a shadow cabinet, consists of opposition MLAs, slash MPs. मतलब in states MLAs, in center MPs, who mirror the portfolios, of government ministers, Full stop. Shadow cabinet is led by leader of opposition, and questions and criticizes the actions of government. Full stop. This system originated in Westminster system, and is used in countries like of course UK, right? UK, Australia, Canada, New Zealand. Full stop. Right? Shadow cabinet allows opposition MPs to gain in-depth knowledge and expertise in their respective portfolios. This prepares them for future for future role as ministers. Future role as ministers. Full stop. Shadow cabinet. Shadow cabinet provides the citizens a ready alternative government. A ready alternative government. Full stop. Next paragraph. In India, comma, shadow cabinet is not practiced. Shadow cabinet is not practiced. Mainly due to multi-party democratic system. Multi-party democratic system in which even the opposition is fractured. Even the opposition is fractured. This reduces the check. This reduces the check on the Indian PM. The check on Indian PM and Council of Ministers as compared to the UK. As compared to the UK. Okay. Next, right? Fourth reason. Fourth point now? Yeah, fourth point. Fourth point, you can give heading, role of speaker. Role of speaker. So can you think of any reason that why, because of the speaker of lower house, the position of Indian PM and British PM can be different? They also have speaker. House of Commons, we also have speaker Lok Sabha. तो स्पीकर की वजह से कैसे पावर में डिफरेंस आ सकता है?
Speaker is from the opposition.
Where?
Indian.
No. Speaker.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
हाँ.
Deputy Speaker is from the opposition. My bad, my bad, my
Right,
bad.
right.
Yeah. So is that point going to add the power to the Prime Minister?
And what about Britain, House of Commons speaker?
I don't know. I'm not aware.
Okay, so you can guess.
Then तो obviously it's from the opposition is from the British.
Okay, no. He is not from the opposition.
Mhm.
But in India, the difference is that once the speaker is elected as a speaker from the majority party, ruling party, he does not give up the membership of his political party. Which means that the Indian Prime Minister still has a way to influence the working and decisions of the speaker in India. Because the speaker is still an active member, is still a full-time member of the political party. So let's say Mr. Om Birla has not resigned from BJP. He's still a member of BJP political party. And therefore, Mr. Modi would have a bigger influence, would have a bigger control over the speaker, and especially in matters such as deciding whether a bill is a money bill or not. So we can give here example of, very good example we have of Aadhaar bill. That how come Aadhaar bill was given the certificate of money bill? Because according to Article 110 Clause 3, the decision of speaker is final. And Sumitra Mahajan, who was the speaker at that time, she gave the certificate of money bill to Aadhaar bill. Whereas Congress party even went to Supreme Court on this matter, and this is very clear, experts agree that Aadhaar bill was not a money bill. But then the fear of Mr. Modi was that if Aadhaar bill is passed either as ordinary bill, or if it is, let us say, at least passed as a financial bill, now in both matters, Rajya Sabha has equal powers. And Mr. Modi did not have majority in which house? Rajya Sabha. So he feared that if Aadhaar bill is passed as an ordinary bill of financial bill, it might get failed in Rajya Sabha. So the Speaker of Lok Sabha, who knows, we are not saying that, who knows, on the behest of Prime Minister, gave it a certificate of money bill. Now, this is not likely in UK. Why? In UK, the Speaker no doubt belongs to the ruling party, but as soon as the Speaker is elected, Speaker resigns from his political party. It means now the Prime Minister of Britain does not have as much control over his former member of the party. अब उनकी पार्टी के मेंबर वो नहीं रहे. आपको अगर याद हो तो एंटी डिफेक्शन लॉ जो हमने पढ़ा है उसमें कुछ एक्सेप्शंस गिवन है. जैसे पहला एक्सेप्शन है कि अगर पार्टीज का मर्जर हो जाता है तो एमपीज डिस्क्वालीफाई नहीं होंगे. मतलब मान लो अगर एक एक्स पार्टी है, एक वाई पार्टी है, एक्स पार्टी के 2/3 एमपीज एमएलएज वाई पार्टी में मर्ज हो गए तो ये सब 2 के थर्ड डिस्क्वालीफाई नहीं होंगे. और जो रिमेनिंग 1/3 नहीं हुए मर्ज, उनकी मर्जी है, वो इंडिपेंडेंट रहे, उसी पार्टी में रहे, वो मतलब कोई डिस्क्वालीफाई नहीं होगा. और सेकेंड एक्सेप्शन क्या है? प्रिसाइडिंग ऑफिसर्स, कि अगर स्पीकर लोकसभा, डेप्यूटी स्पीकर लोकसभा एंड डेप्यूटी चेयरमैन राज्यसभा, क्योंकि चेयरमैन इज एनीवेज वाइस प्रेसिडेंट एंड ही इज एनीवेज नॉन पॉलिटिकल, तो जो तीनों प्रिसाइडिंग ऑफिसर्स हैं दे आर हैविंग दिस ऑप्शन. इफ दे वांट टू लीव पार्टी दे कैन लीव पार्टी एंड दे वुड नॉट बी डिस्क्वालिफाइड अंडर द एंटी डिफेक्शन लॉ. बट देन उस पॉइंट का यूज ही नहीं है, वो यूज नहीं होता फीचर, बिकॉज स्पीकर रिजाइन करते ही नहीं है. अच्छा, यूके में क्या होगा कि स्पीकर एक तो रिजाइन करेगा अपनी पार्टी से. अच्छा, दूसरा, क्यों स्पीकर की पोजीशन स्ट्रॉन्ग है यूके में एंड देयरफॉर द पीएम बिकम्स वीक. स्पीकर इज स्ट्रॉन्ग, पीएम बिकम्स वीक. इन इंडिया स्पीकर इज नॉट दैट स्ट्रॉन्ग, सो पीएम बिकम्स पावरफुल. यूके में एक और कन्वेंशन है कि जब स्पीकर अपना टर्म कंप्लीट करेगा 5 इयर्स का और री इलेक्शंस होंगे हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स के, तो स्पीकर जिस कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी से आता है, so I told you House of Commons has 650 seats. It means UK has 650 constituencies. So from whichever constituency speaker comes, from that constituency the opposition parties will not field any candidate, which means in a way the speaker would be elected unopposed. Just a moment guys, just a moment. Okay. So after 5 years, if the speaker wants to recontest, then the opposition parties will not field any candidate in that constituency. Let us say the speaker is re-elected. Speaker फिर से क्या बन गया? MP. Speaker is re-elected. जैसे मिस्टर ओम बिरला के साथ हुआ है कि वो MP बने, स्पीकर बने, 2024 में वो फिर से इलेक्शन लड़े, फिर से he has won the लोकसभा इलेक्शन and now re-elected as MP. उस केस में if the speaker again wants to be the speaker, then House of Commons would be very happy to make him speaker once again. In fact, ये बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है. होता क्या है कि स्पीकर के इलेक्ट करने का प्रोसेस क्या होता है? हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स when it meets for the first time, it meets for the first time, तो उस केस में एक पोजीशन होती है ब्रिटिश पार्लियामेंट में, उसको बोलते हैं ब्लैक रॉड. ब्लैक रॉड, ये ब्लैक रॉड एक्चुअली एक पर्सन है. इट्स अ पर्सन और यू कैन कॉल इट एज अ पोजीशन. उसको ब्लैक रॉड बोलते हैं. व्हाट डज ब्लैक रॉड विल डू? द ब्लैक रॉड विल गो टू हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ क्वीन, और मतलब राइट नाउ द किंग. किंग के बिहाफ पे जो ब्लैक रॉड है वो कहां जाएगा? हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स। और जैसे ही ब्लैक रॉड हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स की गेट पर पहुंचेगा, द गेट इज शट, गेट को शट कर देते हैं, गेट को शट कर दिया, तो जो ब्लैक रॉड है वो गेट पे नॉक करेगा, नॉक। पहले नॉक के बाद वो गेट ओपन नहीं होगा, मतलब हमें बहुत सारे ड्रामे हैं, कन्वेंशन हैं। तो ब्लैक रॉड जैसे ही गेट पे पहुंचने वाला होगा, गेट शट कर देंगे। उसके बाद वो नॉक करेगा गेट पे, तो पहले नॉक पे नहीं खोलेंगे। क्यों नहीं खोलेंगे? क्योंकि जो ब्लैक रॉड है, इसको किसी टाइम पे किसका सिंबल मानते थे? किंग का, कि वो किंग के बिहाफ पे आया है। तो हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स क्या शो करना चाह रहा है? कि मैं कोई कम थोड़ी हूं किंग से, आई एम नो लेस देन किंग, सो आई विल नॉट बी अंडर द किंग। तो अपनी ईगो में वो क्या कर रहा है? वो गेट ओपन नहीं कर रहा है। तो ब्लैक ब्लैक रॉड क्या करेगा? वो 3 बार नॉक करेगा, 1 2 3, देन हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स गेट विल ओपन, एंड देन ब्लैक रॉड बोलेगा कि भाई किंग ने आपको बोला है, अपना स्पीकर चूज कर लो। अच्छा, अब जो वो स्पीकर रीइलेक्ट हुआ है एज एमपी, उसको दोबारा स्पीकर बनाने जा रहे हैं। तो अब वो क्या करेगा? वो एक ड्रामा करेगा, एंड ही विल प्रिटेंड एज इफ ही डज नॉट वांट टू बी स्पीकर अगेन। तो ही विल प्रिटेंड एज इफ ही इज रिलक्टेंट, कि नहीं नहीं नहीं, मुझे दोबारा स्पीकर नहीं बनना, नहीं नहीं नहीं, आप किसी और को बना लो, नहीं नहीं नहीं, समबडी एल्स कैन बिकम द स्पीकर। और ऐसा वो क्यों कर रहा है? क्योंकि किसी जमाने में द स्पीकर वॉज अ कनेक्शन बिटवीन हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स एंड द किंग। तो अगर हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स को कोई बात, कोई मैसेज कन्वे करवाना है किंग को, तो हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स के बिहाफ पे वो कौन कन्वे करेगा मैसेज टू द किंग? द स्पीकर। और वो जो मैसेज है, वो जो मैसेज है जो हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स डिलीवर करवा रहा है, अगर वो मैसेज राजा को पसंद नहीं आया, तो हैव यू हर्ड ऑफ दिस सेइंग कि डोंट किल द मैसेंजर? हाँ, तो उसको वो यहीं से शायद आई है, आई डोंट नो, यहाँ पे सूट करती है, डोंट किल द मैसेंजर। तो भाई स्पीकर तो मैसेंजर है, वो हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स के बिहाफ पे कोई मैसेज लाया है, लेकिन राजा वो सुनते ही भड़क गया, राजा गेट्स एंग्री। तो व्हाट द किंग विल डू? द किंग विल किल द स्पीकर। तो स्पीकर को अपनी जान की परवाह है, इसलिए वो कैसे बिहेव कर रहा है कि नहीं नहीं, मुझे नहीं बनना स्पीकर, नहीं नहीं। तो फिर क्या करेंगे एमपीज, हाउस ऑफ एमपी कॉमन्स के एमपीज, उसको जबरदस्ती ड्रैग करेंगे। दे विल ड्रैग हिम एंड टेक हिम टू द चेयर ऑफ स्पीकर। लेट मी शो यू, look at this picture.
I now call the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer.
You preside over a new parliament, the most diverse parliament by race and gender this country has ever seen. And I'm proud.
Right now, this is the Parliament of Canada. Same tradition that you drag the speaker actually. See, Mr. Trudeau, Canadian PM, is holding the tie of the speaker, and see how he will behave. नहीं, मुझे नहीं बनना speaker. Right? Okay. And this is the black rod which I was telling you, कि black rod will go to the House of Commons, वो उसको knock करेगा. So have a look at this. This guy is the black rod.
Mr. Speaker, Her Majesty the Queen commands this Honourable House attends Her Majesty immediately in the House of Peers.
Make way for Mr. Speaker.
Okay. So interesting practices, conventions they have in Britain, right? Okay, so time is up. So let's stop here for now. We will continue from here in the next class, right? Okay. Okay, everybody. Until then, take care. Stay safe.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir.